Hey, Uncle Russ, jumping up and down. Welcome to Group W Cable and At Random. Glad that you made it through another day. That's always important. You know, sometimes you have to take life just day by day. Of course, I have a new puppy in my house, and it seems that he's taking it every 2 hours. And that includes in the middle of the night. We have to take him out by hour. But that's the price you pay for a new puppy. It's like having a new baby in the family. All of a sudden, you reminisce to when Junior was 3 or 4 weeks old and all the craziness that went on in your house. Remember that? You don't want to remember that, but that's life. Well, listen, we've got an interesting guest for you today, Mr. Mike Adray, a living legend in Dearborn, a guy that I've known most of my life, even though he was an older guy in high school. But he was there. He was kicking around. We all knew Mike, and we're going to be talking to Mike about growing up in Dearborn and his perceptions of our town, and just sort of kick it around a little bit. Anyway, while we're waiting there, though, I want to talk to you about something that's bothered me all this week. As you know, I'm a critic of the media. I don't think that we understand the meaning of the word responsibility. And time after time, I've had a story done on me by the media, and I've done the interview with the person, and because they pick and choose, in media we call that edit, they can make anybody look good or look bad by just taking something out of context. And they do that constantly in the news business. And that includes the print medium, the television medium, and the radio medium. It came to my attention this week when I heard that 60 Minutes had been out to Grand Rapids to do a story on the Amway Corporation. Now, I happen to know a little bit about the Amway Corporation. I've been out there a couple times. I have had the privilege of meeting one of the founders, Jay Van Andel, and they seem like pretty decent people to me. However, 60 Minutes went out, and in my estimation, 60 Minutes is marvelous entertainment and lousy journalism, because they have a habit of banging cameras into people's faces when they're least expecting it and saying such things as, "When did you stop beating your wife?" Well, you know, how do you answer that? Plus, they have a little trick that they use down there at 60 Minutes whereby they edit things. And, you know, as long as you can pick and choose out of maybe 5 or 6 hours of tape interviews, just certain comments, you can make anybody look good or anybody look bad. You can make anyone look like they're trying to cover up something or be very free and open. 60 Minutes in 2020, that's the type of journalism that does that. Well, the Amway Corporation, God bless them, when they came out, the Amway Corporation put their television crews right on the 60-minute crews. In other words, everything that 60 Minutes took, Amway Corporation themselves took, so that when 60 Minutes did an interview with the officials of Amway Corporation, the Amway Corporation TV crew was also doing that. So guess what happened? 60 Minutes got very nervous about that because they now realize that they're going to have to be very, very careful and very fair in their editing of their story of the Amway Corporation. Because if they don't, I guarantee you the Amway Corporation will take time, commercial time, and put their version on. You see, it's very important to know what somebody says at the beginning and at the end. If you just take things out of the middle, it's not fair. Well, I want to say hats off to the Amway Corporation for having the guts to do that, and it's about time that more people stand up and tell the media where to head in. You know, those of us in the media tend to get feeling very important at times. We get to feeling as though what we say is more important than maybe what you're saying, and that we feel that we have rights and privileges. I never was so disgusted. I was at the University of Michigan, Dearborn one time at an interview, and there was Channel 7, 2, and 4 and their TV crews, and they had Clarence Bell, the Secretary of Education, was over there, and they were doing an interview. In fact, I think it was at the time when they were dedicating the Mike Adray, it's the sport arena over there. And Clarence Bell, the Secretary of Education, was there in this interview. Well, they barged in late, one of the crews, and then what happened is after that, when they finished getting the part of his comments that they wanted, they just got up and walked out, right out of the press conference. bumping into people. They made all kind of noise, carried on rudely, and they think they have that privilege because they're the media. Well, I don't think they have that privilege, and I think we ought to hear more about responsibility of our media. Well, they don't like me when I say that, because they don't like to be criticized themselves, but it's about time more people do it, because that's honest. And that's all I'm asking, is fairness in the media. Well, what do you think? I got a little rankled this week, too, when I was reading Gary Warncheck, the editor of the Press and Guide here in Dearborn. He made a comment. I had Lucille McCullough on my show, and he took something out. He said, while Lucille was banging the mare, that Gibb ate it up. Well, now, what does eating it up mean? You know, what does that mean? That's sort of like, ho, I was agreeing? Well, I'm not necessarily, because I happen to be a supporter of the mayor. I happen to think he does a pretty good job. Contrary to what Mr. Thomas may believe, I tend to think the mayor does a pretty good job. He's not doing a perfect job, but I don't know any man that's doing a perfect job. So, Gary, you can take your paper and your comment today and fold it up and put it away. Listen, I'm going to do some commercials, and then we'll be right back with my guest, Mr. Mike Adray. See you in a second, okay? Okay, back again. Russ, Gibb at Random with my guest today, Mr. Mike Adray. Now, of course, we all know Mike Adray, the merchant king of Dearborn. In fact, on your logo, Michael, you have your face with a little crown on that. Is that where you got the idea, the merchant king, or does that have some other significance, that little crown?
It has another significance. As you know, it says king of sports.
That's right.
And years ago, an old friend who I went to school with, who was in the advertising business, developed the crown and the head idea, and king of this or that. And then eventually, when I got involved in sports, it was automatically grabbed up as the king of sports.
Well, Mike, I know, and I think everybody knows about your business and your philanthropies, the good things that you do for our people and for kids in general. I mean, but before I forget, I want to say thank you for doing all those things, okay?
Well, you're very welcome, and thank you.
I can list hundreds of kids that have benefited by your programs that you sponsor in your sporting event. But today I'd like to talk about Mike Adray, the man. Who is he? Where did he come from? What's his background? And how did you get started? That's, in a nutshell, what I want to talk about.
All right. Well, I am 61 years old. I was born in Detroit, but my folks lived in South Dearborn. Mm-hmm. I grew up in South Dearborn. I went to Salina School. I graduated from Salina School in 1937. Mm-hmm. I proceeded to go to Fortson High School. And I was not a flash in the pan in any means. I was not a superior scholastic student. I played football, and I played baseball, and I was just an average guy, and I had fun at it.
Is that why Russ, you know Russ Kathman?
Very well. It's like a father.
Because he was our principal. He was like that to every kid that went to Fortson.
That's
right. How I feel about Russ, too. And right now, of course, he's ill, and we're all praying for him. Hope he gets over this illness. But he told me a story when he was on the show, and he said, you got to ask Mike about the time that he threatened to throw you out the second-floor window. Well, what was that all about, Mike?
I'll be very honest with you. I think Russ knows more about that than I do. I can't remember the story, but...
he claimed you were skipping school or something.
Well, Russ has a flair for saying things, and my memory doesn't serve me that well, but apparently he knows better. Russ was a great guy, and one of the finest and greatest coaches that I've ever known. He has records at Fortson that nobody will ever achieve. It's just so fabulous. But he was a grand coach and a grand guy.
You know, that's it. He was a real human being. He was tough when he had to be, and yet there were other times that he'd have that twinkle in his eye, and you knew the guy cared.
Russ did care. He was a disciplinarian.
Yep.
And there were others like him, like I'll never forget Joseph Kozlowski, God rest his soul, he's gone. And there was another one that was an excellent disciplinarian, but they were good coaches. But Russ Kathman stood out in the fact that he was firm, he was friendly, and he was dedicated to the job of coaching. He was an excellent baseball coach, and also an excellent basketball coach.
Is this where you got your interest in the sports when you were in high school?
No, I got my interest in sports as a youngster, and I just loved sports. As a kid, back in Salina, in the neighborhood, I played baseball, and because somebody had to be the manager, I was the manager.
And you got involved.
Right, and then when I played hockey, somebody had to do the dirty job of goaltending. I got the job.
But wait a minute, Mike, when we were growing up, we didn't have all the baseball diamonds kids have today, or fancy uniforms, or hockey rinks. As I recall, we used to just get down on wherever the ice would form, and we'd get a couple sticks with cans, and we'd play in the alleys. Certainly that was your experience, too, wasn't it?
Yeah, but we had an older fellow in the neighborhood who I'm trying to think of his name now. Anyhow, he was like a father to us. He was just older
Sure.
than us, and he made makeshift pads and used a chest protector and a mask for a goalie. And when we played baseball, I'll never forget one time I didn't have the mask on, and as a foul tip busted my lip, and never forgot that. But no, it was difficult. We didn't have the equipment that we do have today.
Well, then, you would have come out of high school just about, well, the Second World War would have certainly been
1940.
1940, so just starting. So what happened then to Mike Adray?
I went to the Ford Motor Company, and they put me on a tool and die apprentice program.
That would be the trade school?
Well, it was connected with the trade school. You went to school and you worked, and went to school on your own time at Ford, and you worked during the day. You did your homework at home. It was all homework, but it was an excellent program. It's too bad that they disbanded that program, or practically in its original form. There was a lot of good technicians came out of that program. Yes.
Well, would that have been tied up with the war effort? Was that
Not really. The tool and die program, I'm sorry, the apprentice program was, see, when you went to Henry Ford Trade School, that was youngsters 10, 12, 15 years old.
Okay.
Well, it was a regular school, but it was pointed towards industry. But you still got your English, and especially mathematics and physics and what have you. You still had to have the general courses that you got in high school, but again, it was pointed towards industry. Then when you finished, like you graduated like you did from high school, when you graduated from the Henry Ford Trade School, then they put you assigned you to somewhere in the plant, and you continued on the apprentice program, and that's where I took, when I graduated from Fortson High School, I went, and from that point, I joined that program where I was working on the job.
You were actually employed at the Ford Motor Company?
Oh, yes, definitely. And I learned my ABCs, some more ABCs, but more in the technological field, and pointing towards being a tool and die maker.
That was what you wanted to go to.
Concentrating in mathematics and in physics and especially mechanical drawing and all the things.
Which they had at Fortson, and that used to be a super program. The industrial arts program was just a super program there. They still have it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it is as involved as it was back then, but they certainly had it. Well,
I might add that I was on the program 2 years and very shiftless. Then Uncle Sam was ready to draft me, and I decided I'd rather fly than walk. So I joined the Army Air Corps, and if you wish, I can expound on that.
Well, I want to hear about that. Sure.
Well, I went on to be, found myself doing more schooling, not enough flying. I ended up at Syracuse University for 6 months because they had no place to put the aviation cadets who had qualified for that program. And then after that, I went to Nashville, Tennessee, where I qualified for all three as a bombardier, navigator, or pilot. I was assigned to pilot school. I went to pilot school, washed out halfway through that.
So you had some failures in your life.
Yeah, that's all I did, surely. But I did, I was reassigned to a program where I got my wings as a bombardier navigator, and my beautiful wife, Louise, who had married on leave, came down in 1945 and pinned my wings on, and I was in training for B-29s and destined for Tokyo Bay in 29s. When the war ended, thanks to Harry Truman and his great decision.
Yep, I agree.
And then I came home and went back to the Ford Motor Company to continue on the program and finished my tool and die apprenticeship and became a full-fledged toolmaker.
Louise.
Louise, yes.
Is she from Dearborn?
Oh, she's from Detroit, West Side Detroit. And we only lived a couple of miles, maybe about 3
So you knew her in high school then?
Oh, I knew her before that, yes.
Are there other Adray brothers?
There are 3, and they're all in California.
Not the Adray, there's a big Adray appliance in Beverly Hills, is that?
Yes, that's my brother opened that originally, started that, and sold the store. And
So
they
he
carry
built
the
a-
name. They carry the name, but they do not. My brother does not own it anymore.
But he moved out there and went into
Oh,
that
yeah.
business. And
Oh,
your
yeah.
other brother?
My other brother had a third brother who was in the appliance business, and he retired out there in California, near Los Angeles. And then a third brother, the youngest, Lou, who was near Disneyland, and he's doing exceptionally well, and he's still in the business.
In the business?
Yeah.
Called Adray Appliance?
Adray
too?
Appliance, yeah, that's right.
How do you account for the fact that all the brothers in the Adray family got into the appliance business? Was your dad involved in that?
No, he was not, but I don't know. I guess maybe we were all very fortunate. We seem to have the moxie to do it.
What is that moxie that you have? What do you think it is that makes you such a successful man? And you are a successful man.
I don't know. I
You're a
think it's just
successful human being because of all the good things you do.
Thank you. Well, I don't know. I think it just comes natural. I couldn't be a great star at football or baseball, but maybe my bag was to be a retail merchant, you know. And,
What's your nationality?
my folks were directly from just outside of Beirut, Lebanon.
Oh, you must be agonizing then right now with what's going on.
Well, I am not happy with what's happening over there. I disagree with many things, but there's not. I took the time to write President Reagan a letter and tell him of give him my thoughts on the massacre of the Palestinians and the wrecking of Beirut. But that's a political football game that
There's no winner in that one.
There's no winner, and I don't know that there's going to be any real end to it.
Have you relatives still in Lebanon?
I do have. Yes, I do have.
Have you ever visited?
No, I've never
been
wanted
back?
to.
Of course, you were born and bred here.
Yes, born and bred here, and I love this country, and there are many things that I disagree with in our country. I heard you interviewing that lovely young lady, and I was not
Sweden.
really surprised, yes, from Sweden. And I thought she did an excellent job. But the one thing that kind of bothered me is she said that she would not want to come back to live here. And I've talked to others who have come over, and I'm not criticizing her now, but it's unfortunate that we've reached a point where the greatest country in the world has so much to offer, and she admitted this, but she also commented that she would not want to come back here and live. She would rather live in a small, quiet town where you don't have the go-go and the madness that we have here. And I feel sorry for the youngsters growing up in our country today, in one sense of the word. There's so much pressure on them, and there's so much crime, and they're subjected to so many things that I think youngsters should not be subjected to. It was interesting you brought up the porno program. As I'm sure you well know that in my store we do not sell porno. We
I know
don't,
that.
and I never will.
In fact, you're not even open on Sunday.
Well,
out of deference to, are you a Christian Lebanese?
Oh yes, very definitely, yes. I joined Louise's church, St. Sarkis Armenian Apostolic Church, and I've been a staunch supporter and a member of that church for ever since Louise and I have been married.
So that's one reason why you're not open on Sunday. But hasn't there been a lot of pressure?
Not really, not really. I just don't want to open on Sunday.
I think a day of rest is good for every man.
Yes, and holidays, and my employees love it.
Tell me.
I love it the most, and so does Louise.
How did that all start?
The store?
The store.
That's
Because I recall that was just a very small, tiny little store when I was growing up in '49.
In 1954, I was working as an engineer at the Ford Motor Company, and my brother opened a store near Grand River and Greenfield. Overnight, he was very successful. That's the one that went to California. And
Was that the first one of the first discount stores?
Yes, definitely. So for a year, where I worked at Ford Motor, friends and even my bosses wanted me to go out and get deals for them. Well, finally, Louise said to me, she said, "Why don't you open a store too?" I said, "Don't want any part of it." Well, she started searching for a store. She found the one on Carlisle. This is a true story. We met with the owner on Sunday. It was a new store. It was a little 20-foot store, one of four stores. Anyway, I was on a Sunday. I went to work on Monday, and as fate would have it, my immediate boss and I got into one terrible argument. That night, I left, and I was bound and determined, and I was going to sign that lease, although I had no idea. I never was going to sign it. I was afraid. But that night, I swore I was going to go sign that lease. I called Mr. Jerry Buckley, the owner. We met on Tuesday. I signed the lease. I went in on Wednesday, and my big boss met me at the door, and he says, "Mike, where were you yesterday?" Because he had heard about the argument I had with my immediate boss, and he was distressed over it. I said, "Vince, I'm going to leave, and I'm going to give you 2 weeks' notice." He said, "Well, why?" I said, "Because I've decided to go in business." He said, "Well, is there a reason?" See, what he wanted to do was tell me that, for me to tell him that my immediate boss and I had an argument, and I wouldn't do it. I says, "Look, Max is a nice guy. He's my boss. Sure, we had a disagreement,
Sure.
but for me to make a decision like this, to go into business for myself, is a big decision. But technically, that's what really topped it all off."
One of the most important decisions in your life.
Was the biggest, one of the biggest, yes.
Mike, we only have a few more seconds left, actually. Would you come back again and we can continue this story? I want to talk more about how you got involved in the sporting thing, all the things that you've done, all the charities, all the buildings that are named Adray. In fact, we ought to change Dearborn's name.
Thank you.
And I wouldn't mind, because you do it for young people. And before I say good night today, I want to just say thank you again for everything you've done for our community. And if this sounds like a commercial for Mike Adray, it is. He's a super guy. Russ Gibb, at random. I'll be right back.
Okay, back again. Mike Adray, an interesting guy, an interesting man of Dearborn. A guy that does so many things that you can't even count him. Of course, I have a confession. Mike has a video library that allows you to check out films, video tape recording. And I was moving the other day, and I found 3 of them that I had not returned to his library. And he's probably thinking that somebody stole them. Well, Mike Adray, I'm bringing them back, I guarantee you. I'm bringing them back. They're in the back of my car, and you can have them if you come out after the show. Anyway, that's life in the big city. And for those of you that took the time to view the show today, I want to say thank you. For those of you that took time to drop me a card and a letter, I want to say thank you. But most of all, I'd like to thank you for just being you. Russ Gibb, we'll be back.